Hey, this is Mike Matthews from muscleforlife.com. Welcome to the podcast. Thanks for stopping by. In this episode, I'm going to be interviewing Mark Devine. Mark is a New York Times bestselling author of several books, and he's the founder of NavySeals.com and of SEALFIT and a couple other businesses and cool things he's doing that we're going to be talking about on the podcast. And he's just an all-around interesting dude, really cool guy, nice guy, and he spent about 20 years in the Navy. His story of how he became a SEAL is pretty unique and pretty interesting, and I found him through one of his books and liked a lot of what he had to say, so I thought that I'd get him on the podcast and we'd talk about some interesting stuff regarding like mental toughness and other things that are relevant, not just for getting in shape, but for doing well in life in general. So let's get to the interview. All right. Hey, Mark, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, Mike.
Yeah,
looking forward to it.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it too. You know, growing up, I was all into G.I. Joes, and I always had a military fantasy growing up. So people like you, I kind of like, I admire people like you.
There you go. That's cool.
Yeah. So I think we should start with at least kind of like a quick sketch of how you became a Navy SEAL, and just because it's a very unusual story. I know you've told it a million times, but if the readers haven't heard it, it's interesting. So how did that go down exactly?
I'll just expect that nobody out there knows me, which is cool. It's always a good plan to follow. Yeah. So I'm from upstate New York, and I went to Colgate University, which is upstate New York, and my family was a business family, and so I was kind of like conditioned. I studied economics at Colgate, and then I was kind of conditioned to be a business guy by my family, by our expectations, by the belief systems, by the fact that we had a 100-year-old family business. So, when I left college, I got a job with a company called Coopers & Lybrand, which is now PricewaterhouseCoopers.
Okay.
And it was a pretty good deal. They were going to send me, actually it was an exceptional deal, they were going to send me and a group of others to NYU Business School, get our master's in accounting, which most of us then defaulted into the MBA program. So I ended up with an MBA in finance. And then, we work, basically we go to school at night, work during the day as an auditor, and then the summertime was full-time school. So 2 full-time schools during the summer. Got my CPA over 2 years, finished up my MBA with a 3rd summer but leave of absence. So, 3 years out of Colgate, I had an MBA and a CPA, and I was, working my way up the ranks at Coopers & Lybrand. Actually, it shifted over to Arthur Andersen toward the end of that. And, I was miserable, Mike. I mean, I just, aside from the goal focus, which motivated me, right, to get the MBA and the CPA, the job itself really, really was uninspiring to me. I didn't like the work. I didn't like the people I was working with. I thought there was a lot of greed and centeredness down on Wall Street. Most of my clients were Wall Street clients. Yeah. Incidentally, none of them exist anymore. Like, they've all bombed as a result of ethical lapses, like Drexel Burnham and Lambert and Salomon Brothers. So it's really interesting that what I was sensing at 24 years old, actually became a reality because their behaviors torpedoed them. But I saw that, from my perspective. I said, I don't like this. I don't like these people. There's got to be more, to what's going on.
Right.
And more to life than just slogging it away, climbing the corporate ladder.
Yeah, and just dreaming of retirement one day so you can escape your life.
Or going back to the family business. That's kind of like my option. Either I get into investment banking and make some big money. That was kind of the path I started working on. Right. Or I stay and become a partner and still do pretty good. Yeah. In fact, one of my peers is a fraternity brother of mine from Colgate. He's now running Ernst & Young, and he started in that same exact program as I did. And so, that type of future was definitely there for me if I wanted it.
Right.
Or go back to the family business. And then I have 3 siblings who are now back running the family business in upstate New York. But none of those inspired me. And I tell this story to my, quite a bit, and I did in my book as well. But really, what got me to shift my focus was I'd gotten involved in a really nice martial art called Seido Karate. The founder of the school had his headquarters 2 blocks from where I lived in Manhattan, and he became like my first true mentor. And what he did to me was essentially slow me down and sit me down on a meditation bench. Every day I was there, plus also once a week for an hour. And it was that quiet time of just sitting and watching my thoughts and trying not to think, that I was able to really start to plumb the depths, and to see what was inside of me that I hadn't seen before. And what kept coming up was first thing that came up was that I was a complete misfit as a CPA. I didn't belong there. And there was a reason I didn't like the job and the people, is because I didn't belong there. And then the second thing that came up is, okay, if I didn't belong there, where do I belong? And I went through all the business options and I didn't like any of them. So it forced me to really take the courageous step of contemplating something completely new.
Yeah.
And that's when I started to think, okay, well, how do I define myself? Who am I, right? Why am I on this planet? And those were questions I'd never asked or never been taught to ask. And so started to try to define that. And of course, that was all done on the meditation bench. It wasn't done by any specific exercises or thinking or classes, right? There was nothing like that, at least back then.
Right.
And so, but the contemplation and the tapping my intuition, that all did its work. And so what came up was that, I wanted to be a warrior and I wanted to be a leader, and I had to be in a risky, kind of high stakes field. For some reason, I was drawn toward that. And then once
was that something when you were growing up as well? Like, were you into risky, were you an adrenaline type of junkie kid growing up? Or?
Definitely. And I think part of, I have this thing I teach called, your 3 Ps. You develop your stand in life by understanding your purpose, your passion, and your principles.
Yeah.
And what I was defining at that point in time were my passion. Like, what was I passionate about? And that helped lead me to my purpose. And then I defined my principles around all that. And that became my ethical stand. And that stand said, okay, I don't belong, as a money grub and, CPA. At this point in my life, I'm a warrior and a leader, and I need to get out and lead. And so then I had to define, how am I going to fulfill that new vision? So then the next stage was to look at, well, I could fly for the Marine Corps, I could go work on an oil rig, I could go, around the world and just have a grand adventure, or, I could be a Navy SEAL. So that one had entered my consciousness. And so I kept coming back to the SEALs, and it just really inspired me because it captured everything about what I saw inside of myself. I was a warrior. It was a leadership, it required intense leadership. It was risky. It was extreme athletics, and I was kind of an extreme athlete, as you alluded to. Not in the way that extreme athletes are today, because we didn't have that mindset back then.
Right.
We didn't know we could do a lot of that stuff,
yeah.
And the tools weren't available. But I used to run up and down the Adirondacks. We would run up, a buddy of mine and I, and we would literally wrap our ankles and put knee pads on, and then play tag on the way down. Leaping off of boulders, doing flips in the air and doing crazy stuff. And it's amazing we survived that kind of stuff. But so I looked at the SEALs as representing that. And so, long story short, I finally grew the cojones at 25 to go to the recruiter, and it took a long time, right?
Yeah.
Recruiter basically said, don't get your hopes up, because I wanted to go into officer candidate school, the officer route, instead of enlist. If I had just wanted to enlist, it would have been a lot quicker and easier process. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah, yeah. And so you went and did that, and then I think you said you were 9 years active duty, and then like 11 in the reserve, if I remember correctly, something like that.
Yeah, so I spent my first active tour, SEAL Team 3 and SEAL Delivery Vehicle Team 1, this little mini submarine. So that was about 7 years. What led me out of active duty was my marriage, and I learned very quickly that if the Navy had wanted me to have a wife, they would have issued me one.
Yeah, that's the joke, right?
Exactly, because the first literally 6 months of my marriage, I was home for just a couple of weeks, and my wife literally, she gave me that come to Jesus talk and said, "Listen, it's not going to work unless it's either me or the Navy."
Yeah, yeah.
And I thought hard about it, but I chose her, and that led me back into the business world, but as an entrepreneur. But I stayed in the reserves, which kind of was having the best of both worlds, because I was a Navy SEAL officer, and I could continue to maintain my skills and my relationship with the teammates and that bond, and I would train once a month, and then there would be, literally 30 days a year that I would plug in and do some cool project. And then, of course, after 9/11, I needed to go fight again, and so I got mobilized to go to Iraq, and I got mobilized to go to the Middle East, and then, that put me at around 15 years. In the last, 16 years. In the last few years, I really served my last tour out in Hawaii at Special Operations Command Pacific, doing projects for them and going to the Middle East, or not the Middle East, but mostly in Asia.
Oh, cool.
So it was pretty neat to be a reserve officer, because it kept me in the game, but not as a full-time job. And it also allowed me to develop skills and to now observe, because I was, on the business side, I had started a business to mentor Navy SEAL candidates as a government contract, and then after a year, I shifted that to private. And that's another story, too, as to why and how that happened. But I launched SEALFIT, which is our one of my businesses, which is to train Spec Ops candidates and any professional or athlete who wants to work at that level of mental toughness and resiliency to develop that level of mental toughness and resiliency through a physical training program. That was really my original premise with SEALFIT.
Yeah.
So I shifted to training individuals and anyone who really wanted to work that hard and to spend the time with me. And we have an extremely high success rate, actually, by the way, Mike, with like SEALFIT. The only ones I track, and I wish I could track it even better, but it's really hard. But those who spend a week or more with me and finish my academy and Kokoro camp, I got a 90% success rate getting them through Navy SEAL training. And there's probably 50 to 75 SEALs who are SEALFIT athletes who trained with me. And that's, people who don't know, the SEALs only make 200 new guys a year. It's actually, they're dropping it to 175. Wow. That's how small the community is. You know?
No, I've watched documentaries and read books. And
I'm familiar with out of the 13 or 1,400 people who go to BUD/S, only 175 come out the other end, and that's not including the thousands who try to go to BUD/S and don't make it.
Yeah, I definitely want to talk more about SEALFIT. We'll get to that. So my last little question with your Navy experience is, okay, so you how did it compare? I'm just curious. Like, how did the actual experience compare to what you were kind of expecting going in?
There wasn't a ton of information back in 1989 when I went in. I mean, I had one recruiting video. I knew it was going to be early. The legends were there in 89 just as they are today. Mm-hmm. It's just we didn't have all the resources to train and to really the mental pictures because there wasn't Discovery Channel back then. Right. So I prepared for the worst. And part of my preparation is what I teach now. I prepared physically and I prepared mentally. And the mental training included a deep visualization program where every day I trained in my mind to be a SEAL. Mm. And I think that had the most profound impact than anything else because it led to a sense of certainty about it. I often relate that I had a moment 9 months into my training for the SEALs when I went from I want to be a SEAL to I'm going to be a SEAL, and I started training in earnest. And I still hadn't been contacted by my recruiter. My recruiter was still saying, it doesn't look good, doesn't look good, doesn't look good. And I said, well, I'm just going to press forward as if this is happening. Like, I know it's going to happen. He's going to say yes, and I'm going to be a SEAL. And so I trained my ass off every day, and I trained for about a half hour to 45 minutes visualizing myself every day as a SEAL, doing SEAL stuff. And 9 months into that, I had this shift. It was like a cognitive or consciousness shift where I had this sense of total certainty that I was going to be a SEAL. It had already, I'd already basically earned it through my training. And then I just needed to show up and go through the motions. And literally a week later, the recruiter called and said, Mark, I got great news. You're one of 2 people that got selected to go to Officer Candidate School with a follow-on to go to SEAL training. I was like, awesome. I kind of knew that was going to happen, but awesome.
Yeah, no, that's very cool.
And then when I showed up at SEAL training, I was, it was like I'd been there before. And really, I just had to, make my bed, put on my boots and pants and show up and just crank it out, but there was no thought of quitting. I was very clear about why I was there. And, one of my mantras was they'd have to kill me to get me to quit. They tried, but they didn't succeed.
Yeah, I've heard that type of mentality or that approach to really kind of taking on the being, because obviously if you're looking at anything, there are things you're going to be doing and there are things that are going to be you're going to be having and experiencing because of that. But first, you really have to make sure that you understand what do you have to be, you know what I mean, to be able to do the things you want to do and to kind of have the experience you want to have. So I'm not surprised that worked well for you because I've come across that in reading other people's autobiographies and biographies and whatever. They just kind of stumbled on it themselves in a similar way, you know what I mean?
Right, and that's kind of what I did, and that's kind of become a hallmark of what I try to teach people, and I try to get them to experience it. I write about it, but then if you want the experience of that, you come and train with me, and I'll give you that experience. It's like a benchmark workout for BUD/S, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Which happens to be incredibly powerful for anyone in life because if you got the knowingness that you can make it through SEAL training, that's incredibly empowering. Anything else is easy in life.
Yeah, I can see that for sure. That's all. That's one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the show because, of course, I mean, with SEALFIT, there's a fitness side to it, but there's a lot more, and that mental toughness and self-discipline, self-control, and all that stuff.
Right.
So in your book, The Way of the SEAL, which is what led me to you, actually, it was on my wish list, and I grabbed it, started reading it, and I was like, I like this. I want to get him on the show. I want to get him on the show. So you talk about kind of envisioning your future me as a way of motivating yourself for what you need to do now in the present for that future. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Right. Yeah, this is a derivative of what I did when what I just described. When I wanted to be a SEAL, I was super clear about that goal. I was highly motivated toward it. So I literally put blinders on, blocked out everything else, and visualized that only. So that became my daily vision, right? I was going there. I didn't know the path. The path was invisible to me, but I knew I was going there, and I knew I could figure out the path along the way. So, how do we relate this to everyday life? Well, it's the same process, right? If you've got, let me back up. First, it's really important to get very, very clear about what it is you need to do in life. And what that is absolutely must be tied to your sense of purpose and your unique value, your unique gift to mankind. Okay? And so, kind of the step-by-step process to train this is to get clear about that first. And that could take some time. That's where the practice of, meditation and my warrior yoga and all these kind of silent or non-doing practices are so powerful for folks because most of us in the West, we just don't take time to do that kind of stuff. We don't really know. We weren't taught. And I was fortunate enough to be taught at 2021 how to do that, and it changed my entire life. So, getting clear about who you are, what you need to be doing, what's the long-term vision in your life, and then how are you going to fulfill that vision now, like in this phase of your life. I call that your one thing. Like for me, when I wanted to be a SEAL, getting my trident was my one thing. There was nothing else that I thought about for literally a year and a half to 2 years while I was training, outside. And then once I got into the SEALs and was actually going through the training of Officer Candidate School and then going through BUDS, I kept my vision. Now, I didn't say goal. Obviously, it was a goal too, but it was a vision of me being a SEAL and getting the trident. So
what you were picturing, like it actually being pinned on you kind of thing.
Absolutely. I saw myself getting awarded the trident on that day. I made that day like a super powerful day. I would go there multiple times a week and envision myself getting pinned on the trident, down to the time of day, what the sun felt like on my face, the other people there, my mom and dad in the audience, stuff like that, until it just became super believable in my subconscious mind. Like this is happening. I was practicing being that person, if you will. It's not unlike practicing a skill in a visualization like a sports athlete, but I was practicing that future version of myself. Yeah. And I'm quite confident that it had a profound impact on helping it come true. Even if it was just the confidence that I felt in my
absolutely.
Neurobiology, right? And then I would also see myself doing SEAL stuff, and so I was gaining confidence in an operational sense by, visualizing myself being confident jumping out of airplanes and running and gunning and doing the stuff that I knew that SEALs would be doing.
I mean, there's scientific validity in that. I just came to mind is I've seen research. It was done with basketball players, and I don't remember the exact design of the study, so it's going to sound kind of janky how I'm going to explain it, but basically you had one group of people, they were visualizing shots before taking them. The other were just taking shots. And obviously, they were on the same team, same skill level, or whatever. And the people that had done the visualization exercises performed dramatically better than the people that didn't. Right. And that's just a simple thing of shooting a basketball.
Right. And why that worked is because the guys visualizing it had perfect form. Yeah. In their visualization, but the guys shooting it were shooting it, whatever the normal shot rate was, 50 or 80% or 70%. I don't even know. Yeah. They're probably all over the place, and so they were essentially greasing the groove of their subconscious to be able to hit that number, that percentage.
Yeah, and then when it came time to tell their brain to shoot the ball, there was a difference there.
There was a difference, yeah. Whereas the guys visualizing, they visualize with it's the only thing you can do perfectly is visualize. Yeah. Yeah. But that takes practice. You can't. It's very difficult. Like there's no such thing as perfection except for perfect practice, is what we used to say in the teams. And that perfect practice starts in your mind.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. So that's cool. That's the future meaning. And then obviously like that, I was picking things in the book. There's a lot more. You talk about finding your purpose, finding your passion. You talk about
Right.
those things in the book.
Right.
So I know that the people reading, I mean, that's obviously a hot button. I've written about it on my website, both of those subjects. And a lot of people do wonder, what are they meant to, what are they meant to, why are they here? What is really going to be fulfilling? And that
Right.
definitely, I think, is a personal journey. And I liked how you explained it in your book and gave some exercises where there are no pat answers. There are no, hey, just think about these couple things. I mean, I think, like you said, it really does take reflection,
Right.
and something people, you have to work it out for yourself.
Right. And the key point I wanted to try to make there is that that's critical, right? That's not just a nice foofy idea. Like
Yeah.
that is critical to living a good life, to living a full life,
I
to
agree.
experiencing, the kind of I don't know, your maximum human potential. Let's just say, because you can try to optimize your performance all day long, but if you're focusing that performance on the wrong things, then you're going to be leaving energy on the table, and you're going to eventually fail.
Yeah, and I think it's a point of meaning. I mean, it gives your life meaning.
Right.
And like you
Absolutely.
were running into before, yeah, you could have gone the CPA route and you could have made a bunch of money, but money is hollow. Money is very, it
Sure.
seems so cool when you don't have it, and then you have some money and you're like, this isn't that cool. And then maybe you think, oh, but if I had double the money, it's going to be so
Right.
much cooler. Then you have double the money and you're like, I guess it's not that cool.
Yeah, none of it's cool unless you're very, that money's following you in the pursuit of something you're super passionate about, that's completely aligned with your purpose, and you're principled about it. So it's not like you're not hurting anyone in the pursuit of the money. You know what I mean?
Totally.
You're helping.
Yeah, totally. All right. So now one of the principles you also talk about in the book is doing today what others won't. And you kind of break that down into a few imperatives.
Right.
Can you talk about that a little bit, because I think it's especially relevant, even if it's just for getting into shape. I mean, it's relevant to a lot. It's relevant to a lot more in life, but even if it's just getting into shape.
Sure. It's one of my favorite quotes. We do today what others won't, so you can do tomorrow what others can't. I believe it's the Smoke Jumpers Creed.
Yeah. I highlighted it in my Kindle.
Yeah, such a cool quote. And so we use that all the time, because what it speaks to is that you're making what through that process you make the uncommon common, right? Or you make the exceptional common and doable. And it's still exceptional to other people, but to you it's common. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And so what that means is you do an uncommon level of work today. And that uncommon level of work in the context of fitness is, you work harder and smarter.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you do that? Well, it means that instead of just working out, you have a very specific training regimen that has the right tools, and it's functional, and it's ratcheted up in intensity, and it's methodical, and it's comprehensive. Which is really what I try to do with the SEALFIT training program. Is like, okay, what do we need foundationally to live a very, very long and powerful life physically? Well, we need strength, and we need stamina, and we need to be durable people.
Yeah.
Right? And we need to have endurance and mental toughness, and we need the ability to work super high intensity for short periods of time when there's a crisis. So I call that work capacity. So I build the training around those 6 principles, and it's incredibly rewarding. It's very challenging, but if you start doing it on day one, you're going to be doing more work than you did yesterday, and then tomorrow you're going to be doing more work and more effective movements, and maybe get through more of the workout than you did today. And then so every day you're doing a little bit more and working a little bit harder and learning some new skills, and you're doing essentially every day what other people are shying from, because most people are either not doing anything, or they're going to the gym and stepping on the treadmill, or going to the Pilates studio. And again, none of that is bad, right? I'm not putting that down. I'm just saying, you leave stuff on the table if you don't push yourself hard. I'll give you an example. I was in Ashtanga yoga. Ashtanga yoga is extraordinarily challenging. And when I found it, I was like, oh, this is like my new martial art. And after a few years of doing it, I felt weak because it was such a narrow range of movements. And there were certain things that I could do that were extraordinary, but then, I couldn't come and lift up a barbell or do snatches or cleans and jerks or muscle ups and handstand push-ups and, all the stuff that I do now, I just couldn't do. And so here, 8 years later, after starting CrossFit and then SEALFIT program, I am far stronger and far more functionally fit than I was. I'm 51 now than I was in my early 40s, even in my early 30s. Actually, I'll make that bold statement. And I still do yoga 5 times a week. I don't do the full hour and a half long Ashtanga practice, but I do yoga now more for the durability and the recovery aspects and the mental control aspects,
Yeah.
rather than as my workout.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. And when you do today what others won't, that you're essentially developing a comfort level with discomfort.
Mm-hmm.
You make pain, you develop a relationship with pain, so you realize that pain is something that you can manage, and you can actually get intimate with it, and you can learn to control it. So those
Yeah, can you
things,
tell that? I mean, that's an interesting point. It's something that's kind of I've thought about that just in terms of I mean, not even necessarily physical pain. Working out is such a you just for me it's I've been doing it for a while, and yeah, my workouts are tough, but I can't really. I guess maybe I've come to that point where the discomfort is just normal, but
right?
But even relates to just life, to doing the things, the amount of
Sure.
work and what it takes to succeed. Is that is a different type of discomfort, you know what I mean, that you
Sure.
have to just learn to just deal with, and you
Right.
not run away from.
Yeah, exactly. It has to do with the ability to be in control of your mind, and that's why mental toughness is such an important part, or mental control is such an important part of physical training, and they go hand in hand. Where the mind leads, the body follows. Where the body leads, the mind chases. And so, if you are experiencing, workout-related pain, the resistance to moving the load or to running that long distance, then, I'm not saying to go into denial about it. I'm saying to acknowledge the pain, to recognize the benefits that is bringing you, to recognize that when you bump up against the thresholds of that pain, you can ride there for a while, and you'll know, your body will tell you whether you can push through, and then it's up to your mind to decide to push through to a new level, a new threshold.
Yeah.
And when you reach that new threshold, then you have a new reality around that pain as it relates to that particular exercise type, so that then the next time you do it, you can get back there quicker and push through to even a higher level of threshold. And in this way, you essentially learn that you're capable of 20 times more than you thought you are, because there's 2 ways to find that. And one is the incremental daily press higher and higher levels of performance by pushing through pain barriers, knocking them down one at a time. The other is through what I call a Crucible Experience, which is why I designed one of our programs called Kokoro Camp, which is modeled after the Navy SEAL Hell Week. And that Crucible takes you there in like a rocket ship, right? Because it's so intense and so acute, and it's so there's so many failure points but you still don't quit. If you don't quit and you just keep driving forward, you realize that your body then gets to the other side of all pain, and it almost becomes like a mystical experience where pain subsides. You're fatigued, you're sleep deprived, you're cold, you're completely physically exhausted, but then all of a sudden you get to this place where you like magically, like a phoenix, start rising up and just dominating and conquering, and you're getting stronger. And your body starts adapting and getting stronger. And I actually was growing muscle mass by Thursday of Hell Week, when I went through SEAL training. That's really uncanny. People would never have expected that. And I didn't expect it, but it taught me that the body has far more power than we like to think it has. And obviously driven by the mind. If the mind is, as the executive agent of the body, is focused and clear and can make good decisions and believes in your potential, then your body will step up and take notice, right? And so instead of breaking down and leaving you crushed in a 50-hour nonstop training, it can build you up and make you stronger. It's really cool. And so those are the 2 ways that we develop mental toughness and resiliency: is the daily embracing the suck and doing something different that other people won't do every day, and then really challenging yourself beyond measure. Periodically, like once or twice a year in a barnstorm event, which is that you're scared. It makes you scared.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine. It's like I said, I mean, you see just documentaries of Hell Week, and if you're recreating anything like that, I'm sure it's pretty much a brutal shock to the people going into it.
Yeah, it is. But people train for over a year, or sometimes 2.
Wow.
More, and a lot of people, have their finger hovering over the enroll button for several years before they even have the courage to push it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I bet. Yeah, I think just bringing it down to even just everyday type stuff of where if someone's feeling a bit tired, like, oh, it's the end of the day, do they really want to go do that workout? Or,
Right. Right.
or if it's work related, work those extra hours, burn the late night working and whatever. And that you get the mental resistance of the reasons why you can't do it and whatever.
Right.
And,
Right. And that kind of speaks to the relationship you have, your ability to control your mind and keep focused on what I call the courage wealth, right? And so, we all experience that resistance. I do too. I have a practice that's I call it integrated training. So I do the SEALFIT training, operator WODs, 2 to 3 times a week. I also do an additional strength regimen that doesn't have the intensity level to give my nervous system a break 2 times a week. I'll do some sort of run or weighted ruck, try to do that once a week. I do yoga, a minimum of 3 times a week. I also do Tai Chi 3 times a week, and I've got a self-defense based on Sansu Kung Fu that we do here at our training center in Encinitas. I do that. I try to do that twice a week. Sometimes I only make it once. But the Sansu is in the evening. It's at 5:30 p.m. And I used to train when I was younger all the time in the evening, especially in the martial arts.
Right.
But for the last 10 years, or actually I've been married now for 20, but, since my son, he's 15, just turned 15, but cool. Since it became really important for me to be home with him and be home at night for the family, I'd gotten out of the habit of training in the evening. And I also work out really hard in the morning, right? So
yeah.
I train from 7 until 10 every day.
Wow.
Every morning. And then I'm able to really focus on those tasks and projects that are highly critical that are going to move the dial forward on my business or personal goals. And then, starting, I just started this Sansu training. I shifted it from morning to evening because I was just running out of time in the morning. I meet that resistance at 5 o'clock or 5:20. I'm like, oh God, I really want to go home and, see my family and everything. And, and then
eat some food.
Eat some food. I'm exhausted. But, part of this whole idea that we're talking about is, I want to do today what others won't. So I understand that once I commit to stepping foot inside that the studio, which is right here in my training center, so it's pretty easy for me. But this is no different than committing to getting in your car and just start driving toward the dojo,
sure,
or the yoga studio. Once you commit to taking that action, then everything else starts lining up. So you get control of your mind and say, okay, yeah, I'm committed to doing this. I'm doing this. Okay, that's the hard part. But how hard is it to say I'm doing it versus I'm not doing it? It's not that hard when you really think about it. It's just a series of words.
Yeah.
But once you say the words and then you're committed to them, then you start moving that direction. Then your mind, and this is a skill too, your mind goes to work to condition yourself positively for that experience. Like, okay, this is going to be great. I'm looking forward to this. Not only is it going to feel good, I'm going to start sweating again. I'm going to learn some new skills. I always feel like $1 million when I'm done.
Yep. And then once you start going, like I found, whether it's a work thing that's just going to be boring drudgery and you're like, oh, whatever, just got to do it, or it's going to be a workout when you're exhausted, which can feel like you start thinking about it and you think it's going to be drudgery.
Right. You
start going, and that's in my experience, and then you just get into it, and then you you just focus on it, and all of a sudden now it's interesting. Okay.
It's not interesting, and the energy starts flowing, and your mind collapses now to the present moment of the training. And that kind of speaks to a whole nother part of mental management is that, Mike, most people spend their time mentally in the future or the past, and they don't allow themselves to be in the present. And in the present, pain really dissipates. Pain has a linear construct to it. I'm not saying there isn't pain in the present, but, the pain that you experience has already happened.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So in the present, you kind of you ride a razor's edge where that you're in a much more intimate relationship with that pain, and you can tell if it's leading you to injury or if it's just something you need to embrace the suck and move on. Right.
Yeah, I guess there's the difference. If we're talking about working out, there's a difference between discomfort and pain. You know what I mean? So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I use the term pain, kind of to mean discomfort, but truly, if you are. My yoga teacher used to call it integrating pain and disintegrating pain. So integrating pain is pain that's leading to a stronger you. Disintegrating pain is pain that's like disintegrating part of your body. So you want to learn the difference between those two.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. I think it's also worth saying that keeping your word to yourself is an important part, at least I think so, of when you say you're going to do something, doing it, so you can come to almost trust yourself and not. Because I mean, I know people that have gotten to a point where they've tried and failed at so many different things, where when they try to take on anything new, I mean, even if it's a hobby or it's something that doesn't have that much of a purpose or anything behind it, they don't, when they say, even to themselves, I'm going to do this, it's very hollow. It almost doesn't mean anything, because you know, their experience has taught them that they're probably going to give up, and that's in the back of their head. You know what I mean?
Right, and you're right. They've already given up before they try. They're just going through some motions, you know. But yeah, it's the habit of staying the course is something that you develop by staying the course.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean,
commitment.
The way out is the way through. I don't know.
Yeah. Now here's a little. This is something that I've talked about a lot, but I just got back from a coaching session I'm part of with this guy named Dan Sullivan, strategic coach. So I'll give him credit for these words, or this exact sequence of this concept of confidence, which is really cool. So the idea is that, you know, if you want to start something and you actually commit to it, that doesn't immediately lead to confidence. In fact, it doesn't. There's the first experience you have from that is fear of resistance, fear of failure.
Yep.
And so you need to then activate your courage muscle, right? So both commitment and courage are things that have to be practiced. You know, they are values, but values are nothing unless you practice them and they become part of your character. So the commitment to something, that's why warriors and leaders, and what I teach is, you don't commit to something unless you're really sure it's the right thing, right? Because too many people take on commitments that they really are lukewarm. They aren't, you know, hair on fire, you know, excited or passionate about. And so you're right, after a few days, weeks, they just kind of fall off, you know what I mean? And they think, oh, no big deal. But for a warrior, commitment is everything. You know, you're committed to protecting your teammate with his life. I mean, that's the ultimate form of commitment. And when you live with that, then you choose your commitments very carefully. And then when you decide to commit, let's say you're finally at a point where you say, okay, I've got to get off my ass and start doing something different with my workout regimen, because I'm 35 or 40 years old and I just feel like my body's going in decline, and just going to the gym and, you know, hanging out in the treadmill and pushing some weights around and the Cybex machine isn't doing it anymore.
Yeah.
And I say, hallelujah. Okay, so you commit to going to a CrossFit gym. So you don't, basically that commitment is a 100% commitment. It can be time bound. So I think that's a good idea. Take that and say, okay, I'm going to commit to this for 6 months.
And then if you want to be smart, pre-commit and go pay for your membership for 6 months. And
totally. And that's the smart business people to get people to do that. So, you know, commit to 6 months, pay for 6 months, and then commit to doing at least 3 sessions a week.
Yeah. Right?
That's easy. Now I'm like, okay, three 1-hour training sessions a week. How could, you know, anybody can do that?
Yeah.
And all you got to do is show up, like we talked about earlier, and the environment, the coach, the WOD, you know, your peers, they take the energy, just, you know, infuses you with boundless enthusiasm. Boom, you just crush it. You feel great. That becomes a self-reinforcing cycle of success.
Yeah.
And six months later, you've completely transformed your body and your concept of what it means to be fit and functional fitness. All your health measures have fallen into line. It's amazing, right? And so you've gone from the commit part was the first step, and then the courage to show up every day with a great attitude was the second. And you develop that courage. But that still doesn't lead to total confidence, right? The total confidence at the end of 6 months isn't there in the beginning. So you have to then, the third step is to develop competence, you know, or the capacities to do the work. And so that's where, you know, you start out with an on-ramp program. You learn how to do the Olympic lifts, you know, slowly. You're an infant at them. You know that you got to do them slow, because otherwise you get hurt. You don't want to get sidetracked with an injury early on. Yeah, because that can debilitate you.
I mean, so that kind of highlights the importance of if you're gonna do CrossFit, you better make sure you have a good coach and
for sure,
you know, somebody that is going to work you into it on a good gradient, because otherwise, you're going to get hurt. If you start trying to throw around heavy weights doing Olympic lifts, it's not
stand by. You will get hurt, exactly. And all the criticisms around CrossFit are about that particular issue. Yeah, people jump into it either without a coach and get injured, or they have a coach who literally has done no more than 2 days cert. Exactly. And they let the ego get in the way, and boom, they get injured. And so those are all good critiques. So we try very carefully to bring people slowly along the list, you know, to go much slower than they want to go, actually, to develop that foundation. Yeah. So that's it. And so you starts out with that commitment to get in great shape, to do something, to change your life. And then that leads to you feel fear about it. You feel uncertainty. And so you need to then have the courage and the belief totally always connect back to that why. Why am I doing this? Oh yeah, I'm doing this to transform my life because I want to be stronger at 60 than I am at 40.
Yeah.
And when
And
you
I want to go play, whatever sport with my grandchildren. I want to
right.
live to be 100 and be healthy and enjoy every day of it and all that.
Totally. And to me, what you just said there, that should be part of everyone's why, especially if you have a family.
Yeah.
You may have some other whys, but that one right there, that's one that drives me. It's like, I want to be, when I'm 100, and I want to be there for my kids and my grandkids, and someday maybe my great-grandkids. And I don't want to be, be sitting there as that kind of strange old guy drinking a martini.
Talking to the wall.
Talking to the wall, exactly, drooling on himself. That they fear going to see. I have a vision of them like jumping on me and, like they do now, and just wanting to play and still being able to roll around with them and do cool things. You know what I mean? And so that's your why. And so that gives you the courage to like, okay, I'm going to commit to those 3 days. I'm going to take the crawl, walk, run approach to learning. I know that in a month I'll feel better. And in another month I'll have even more skills and competence. In another month I'll be have more skills and competence. And then ultimately I will feel confident about this to where I can then even step it up further. And that cycle, is just an amazingly self-reinforcing, positivity loop.
Yeah, definitely. And then it'll spill over in other areas of your life too. So then
absolutely,
when you start contemplating, you could be going after the girl or the guy, or it could be going after the job or whatever, you start to think about it differently, and that if you do commit to it, you can see it through to the end, just like you did with that other thing,
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, so talking about mental toughness, that's obviously you've talked a bit about it, but I want to kind of address it directly. Obviously, so like being a big part of kind of being an effective person, whether you're talking about like a special forces operator or just like a worker or entrepreneur or whatever, is this point of mental toughness. Obviously, few people ever need to become or at least need to test their mental toughness or train it as much as a Navy SEAL does, but what have you learned along the way in this regard that has helped you not only just like stay alive on the battlefield as a warrior, but now off, as a businessman and just kind of making your way through life?
Okay, well, I've learned a couple things. One is that mental toughness is a skill, and that resiliency is part of mental toughness. Like mental toughness is more than the mind, right? It also includes being physically tough, being emotionally tough, being spiritually tough, right? And so that's one, is that it crosses boundaries, right? The body-mind system is intricately interrelated, and so if we just ignore those other aspects, that could be the point of critical failure, right? That'll lead to a cascading failure. And so that what I noticed through my own training and then through training of thousands of Spec Ops candidates is that you can train mental toughness and resiliency. Back when I went through SEAL training, I trained through that martial arts program with Nakamura inadvertently to me. I didn't realize that I was training my mental toughness and resiliency. He did, but he's Japanese, he didn't speak great English. He just looked at his character development, and he developed our character through just whompingly hard workouts and then sitting in silence and then taking us on these retreats where we went to like Zen Mountain Monastery, and we did integrated training, but we didn't know it. Like we were training physically, doing scary things. We were training emotionally by getting held accountable by the team and by having to expose ourselves in front of other people by performing, these advanced katas and fighting, in front of the class and all that kind of stuff. That develops emotional control and awareness. And then the spiritual development, from sitting on the meditation bench for 45 minutes and really, contemplating deep questions that he would pose us in his little lectures afterwards. I mean, it's really, really cool. So it went well beyond the physical training. And so that was one of my biggest ahas when I started training SEAL candidates, is I can't just train the physical. I want to train mental, emotional, and spiritual, just like I got trained back when I was in the 20s, and what allowed me to sail through BUD/S and become the honor man of my class. And so that became kind of my mantra, that mental toughness can be trained if we train in an integrated manner: physical, mental, emotional, intuitional, and spiritual. Those are my 5 mountains. I call them the 5 mountains.
Right.
And so through that, you develop greater awareness, more mental control, more mental focus. You learn to win the event in your mind. You learn to take really achievable short-term goals and just nail them and develop momentum, positive momentum around that. And you learn to be super positive, because you understand that negativity destroys performance. And so you maintain a real positive mindset and mental and also emotional state. And you learn through that positivity, you also learn to be an incredibly good teammate. And you realize, and I teach that you can't do it alone, that no Rambos make it through buds. So, you have to kind of set your ego aside and become a good teammate. You have to develop humility. And in that team setting, you have to be able to ask for help. You have to be able to give help, especially if you're cold, tired, wet, and you want to lick your own wounds. That's the perfect time to take your eyes off yourself and to turn them on someone else and start serving them. And then that has an energetic blowback that's like 10x of giving you all this energy, So you can't be negative in an act of service. So I boiled those down, and these principles. Oh, and breathing, that's critical. So you get control of your body through the breath, which allows you to then control your mind. So then win in your mind, and then you can win on the field. So I boiled these down into what I call the big 4 skills of an unbeatable mind, and that is, first of all, is breath control. So I train people to control their breathing, and there's a real art to that and science to it. And then through that, they develop more mental control. So I train people then to work with that mental control to develop a greater awareness of their thoughts, to understand where their cognitive mind is leading them astray through improper thinking or judging. I give them mental models or mental tools to make better decisions. I teach them a process to really shift their mind into and keep it in a positive momentum kind of oriented fashion. By helping them understand how to use the future and the past more effectively, but then to stay focused on the present action, a present action which is going to get them to victory, but in a very deliberate way, a very deliberate step. And so those, if I could just summarize those 4, it's breath control, it's what I call positivity, it's being able to visualize the win, the victory in a positive manner, and to maintain that vision in your mind while you're working toward it, so that it has an energetic effect on your body, and also to set micro goals, to know which goals to go after, and then to go after the shortest possible variant of that, so that you can just knock it down and then choose the next one and knock it down, choose the next one and knock it down. So in that way, halfway toward the target, you've already accomplished every single goal that you've put in front of yourself, and your confidence has gone through the roof. You develop that cycle of commitment, courage, competence, and confidence to such a level that you can't fail. Now, in fact, one of our sayings in the SEALs is failure is not an option. It's because we follow this process where you fail your way to success until you just can't fail anymore, and you win. It's pretty
like you're saying, embrace the suck. I like that concept, because that's anything. That's learning. I'm learning to play golf, and golf is a tough sport. You suck at the beginning. It's not like take basketball. You can probably learn to shoot a basket on your first day. Golf,
right.
You're atrociously bad for your first 3 to 6 months. So it's something you just have to, and then
keep chipping away at, so to speak.
Yeah, exactly. So I like that concept. I think there's also probably something to be said for just the overall kind of mindset, where I think of luxury and kind of like soft times make soft people kind of thing. And with our modern lifestyle, there's almost like a curse of how convenient and easy it is to, you don't even have to move anymore to stay alive. You could just sit, you know what I mean? Like you can just order some pizza, they get delivered into your mouth, and you can shit in some diapers and throw those away. You know what I mean? It's where I think some people will get funny ideas about what should and shouldn't be normal, or what they should and shouldn't have to do or experience or whatever. You know what I mean?
Right. And you're absolutely right. And essentially, my belief is the human being thrives on challenge and grows through challenge. And if you don't challenge yourself, then you're not growing and you're dying. You're essentially backsliding. And guess what? The world is going to challenge you anyways, right? Because that's just the nature of things. So one of the concepts in the book is you go to the challenge. You don't wait for the challenge to come to you.
Yeah, I like that.
And by doing that, you develop the mental toughness, the resiliency, and essentially those other challenges, they usually avoid you. You know what I mean? It's like there's a big kind of register in the sky that says, okay, Mark's challenged himself and done it in an honorable fashion so many times that, we're not going to give him the cancer that was planned for him, He's avoiding that one. Let's cross that one off the list.
If he gets weak. Right.
Yeah,
that's funny. Yeah. All right. So you're not only a best-selling author, and you're also the founder of NavySeals.com and US Tactical, which you were talking about, which trains spec op candidates, but you also are the creator of SEALFIT. And
Right.
you've talked about it a bit. Is there anything else that you think we should know, or that the readers and the listeners should know about SEALFIT, how it works, and
Sure.
like is it, like, for instance, the super hardcore stuff, is that
Yeah.
for anybody that wants to come try it, or how does it work? How does the whole thing work?
Well, just like the SEALs, you just got to start somewhere if
Yeah.
you're not already an elite athlete. If you're already an elite athlete and you're looking for a challenge, like if you're the kind of person that would just go and run a Spartan race or a Go Ruck challenge, then the Kokoro camp, which is our 50-hour nonstop training, is extraordinary. And it's not a camp we're trying to attrite people. Like, we do have people quit, maybe 20% of every class, but
Sure.
you have to be fit. The standards are on our website. But it's really about developing a concept of teamwork, a greater sense of what your potential is, and an ability to tap into a reservoir of strength that you didn't know you have. So we kind of think, we have a saying that you meet yourself for the first time at that program. It's extraordinary. But a lot of people, and admittedly they self-assess improperly sometimes, but a lot of people just say, I'm not ready for that. And so, where do you start? Well, over the past couple of years, I've developed kind of the other end of the spectrum,
Right.
because so many people are like, I just can't do that.
Well,
know
yeah,
what I mean?
it needs an on-ramp, of course.
So I wrote an on-ramp program in my books, and then 8 weeks to SEALFIT, and then the on-ramp program in real life starts with either doing the program yourself and then we have a 3-day academy at SEALFIT called the Fundamentals Academy. It's really 75% skills and 25% hard work. So it's really, we had a 67-year-old guy go through it last weekend, and he had an extraordinary time. Now he was pretty fit, but I've also had a 67-year-old woman with no cartilage in her knee go through it. So it's not meant to be like just for elite athletes. Now it's scalable, so the elite athletes who go through this academy get their money's worth. Let's put it that way. I mean, they're super challenged, but that 3-day academy is to learn the whole physical and training model, and we train long days and sometimes into the night, and it's just really, really cool program. It's over a weekend. And the second one, like the next intermediate step, is the 20X, which is a 12-hour event. It's kind of like a Kokoro light, and it's 12 hours of nonstop training. It's super cool. Again, nobody should quit. I've only had one person quit, ever. He just didn't know what he was getting himself into.
Right.
But again, it's not meant to be like the Go Ruck selection where only one person is going to survive this. It's really about teaching you through the team, through the experiences, through the training, and through the the content and the lectures. And I always try to provide some level of the mental toughness training content in a class setting at all of these events, either myself or one of my coaches, so that you understand the tools that I'm trying to get across, and then we work with those tools. We drill them with you all day long, under load, under pressure, so that you can take those big four skills that I alluded to earlier. You take them home with you and start using them. And you should read some of our testimonials. Are extraordinary. People breaking through and doing crazily cool things, or major changes in their life because of those four simple tools they start to put into place in their life.
Yeah.
So that's kind of it. You start there, and then you kind of walk the talk, or walk the path, and then there is a 5-day academy and also a 3-week academy. Actually, it's 21 days for soft candidates, spec ops candidates. And then we're kind of starting to create the what's after Kokoro. So we have a mentor program. We're certifying people to be SEALFIT mentors. And then we got a program called Turning Steel, which is like the team experience, the tactical team experience, where you do self-defense and shooting as a team, and then work as a team to go through a kill house, and then putting a whole mission together and executing a mission.
That's awesome.
And they're very small, 12 to 14 person classes, and we do those around the country. That's a new program we started last year. It's really cool.
That's very cool.
Yeah,
but a bunch of cool stuff. I want to look into it.
Yeah,
and
hope to see you out here.
Yeah,
You'd love it.
Sounds like it'd be a lot of fun, all of it. And I'm assuming SEALFIT.com is where people can find information on that.
Absolutely, SEALFIT.com.
Okay, awesome.
All one word.
Yeah. Of course, there's Google, but hey, we might as well give the URL. So, is there anything else you'd like to say to listeners?
Sure. One of the things that I would say is that even though I just said that, anyone can do SEALFIT, what I've experienced is that there's still a lot of resistance. People are like, wow, sounds good, but it's just not for me, or women like, I'm not really, inspired by the military style training.
Yeah.
The academy, 2 points. One, the academies are really like a professional warrior athlete academy. It doesn't have a military feel to it. You can see some of the videos on the website. And two is I created a program called Unbeatable Mind, and I also have a book by that title that's self-published, which really is the entire philosophy of the integrated training and the development of all the 5 mountains. And in the program, it's a self-study program. In that program, I introduce all the physical training, and there's physical, the 8 weeks of SEALFIT stuff is in there, and all the mental training tools, starting with the big 4. And, it's a 12-month program. You can get out anytime you want. Even just the first 3 months are extraordinary. And that is called Unbeatable Mind, and unbeatablemindcom is the website. So if anyone's sitting there going, I don't know if SEALFIT's for me, but I've got there's been a 3,000 or 4,000 professionals, investment bankers, entrepreneurs, investors, executives, athletes, warriors even, who have gone through or are part of Unbeatable Mind, and there's a community around it of mentally tough and resilient people who are trying to develop together. It's just really cool, and it's a big part of where I want to go in the future, is to develop more, take this to a bigger, broader community, because I think so many people could benefit from the things that we teach about how to, just how to think better and how to be more focused and more confident and, courageous, and to live by a real creed like the SEALs do, where they're just super clear about what they do and why they do it. And then step up to a higher level of awareness and consciousness, where they're sheepdogs and they're starting to solve the world's problems instead of being, reacting to them and being victims to them. So it's kind of my mission, is to influence 1 million people who influence 1 billion people, and to help change the world, because it's go time. I think it's really kind of falling apart, and it's not going to change until every freaking individual who can steps up and starts to take responsibility.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I think it's awesome. Unbeatablemind.com, you said, right?
Right.
Yeah, I have that book on my wish list too. I'll check it out next.
So if you wait a bit, I've got that. I'm actually doing another edition, which I hope to have published by the end of December. So
okay. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. I'm releasing second editions of 2 of my books, kind of rushing to get it out for the December, January.
It's cool to do that. I was telling people, self-publishing. I've got 2 published books. One with St. Martin's Press, and one with Reader's Digest. And the self-published book, I've earned 10 times as much money.
Oh, of course.
There's no question the marketing of the other 2 books is exposing people, which is probably why. But the other thing about self-publishing is it becomes a living document. You can change it anytime you want.
Absolutely. Yeah, I've made multiple updates just, because I get a lot of good feedback and suggestions and whatever, staying in touch with so many people.
Right.
It's funny. I mean, I had a couple big publishers wanting to do these books, but it's just, with where things are at now, for me, it just didn't make sense. Even, I mean, they one in particular was offering what is a really good deal. It's a very unusual deal, but when I really sat down and looked at the numbers, I mean, even my agent was like, yeah, that deal just doesn't make sense. As good as it is and as unusual as it is, you're probably just going to lose money over the course of the next 5 years. Like, well, then why do it then? I'll just do it myself. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, yeah. All right, cool. Thanks a lot for taking the time, Mark. This was awesome.
Mike.
I know that the listeners are going to resonate for sure. This is a lot of stuff. I might get asked about a lot of these questions. That's why I chose it. So
cool. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So let me know if I can help out again. And it's really nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
All right. Hoo-yah.